Hello, and welcome to another episode of Raise the Bar. I am your coach, your host. Hold on 1 minute. Yeah, do I have to edit this already? All right. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Raise the Bar. I am your host, Troy Haynes of Sky High and Fly Jump Camps. And today our guest is Tony Holler, who is a high school track coach in Illinois. And I came across his profile on Instagram, and he is the coach that has coined the term "feed the cats." And Tony's philosophy, which sounds like it's new and smacks of new and revolutionary, is that speed and what he calls CNS, central nervous system training, is paramount in importance to just about every event that you can think of. Sprints, hurdles, jumps, throws, and surprisingly even distance. And we sat down about a month and a half ago, and this is added on intro later, and we discussed how that all came to be. So on this episode of Raise the Bar, get ready to listen to Coach Tony Holler and be ready to be amazed.
Yeah. I'm just a track coach. Taught chemistry for 38 years, and I'm in my 42nd year of coaching football, basketball, and track. But my 42nd year of coaching track. And that's all I do now.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's just a public school. I'm a head track coach, so I coach. I've coached all 18 events. But in the last 10 years, I've written a lot, and I've created a lot of content that it's been crazy, and it's taken me kind of all over the world and coast to coast and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's kind of fun.
Awesome. So let me ask this question. For that content, this is something that's I haven't had a chance to talk with anybody else about, because most of the guests they're either just quote unquote just coaching, or they're in the middle of being an athlete, or sometimes a little bit of both. I had a long and triple jump coach out here on the coast, Next Phase Athletics. You might have seen Ryan Sanders, and he's still an active triple jumper, still kind of trying to train a little bit while he's coaching. But I haven't talked with anybody just straight on the writing or publishing or whatever. Like I made a venture into doing Zoom classes just last year. I called it High Jump 101, and started putting out some of my thoughts and my trainings for. I break the high jump into 5 phases: straight, curve, takeoff, flight, and layout. And I started doing them step by step. And there's an encyclopedia of high jump training in my head that is kind of slowly leaking out, because it's too big to do it all in one shot, right? So I'm
Sure.
kind of doing the whole, how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time kind of thing. But I'm curious as to hear your side of where you got that idea from, and then how you started pursuing getting out these writings and teachings.
That's interesting. I've done probably 100 podcasts, and I've never been asked that question. And it's kind of a fun answer. 10 years ago, I was asked by our state association's website guy if I would write maybe 3 articles in the next 3 months, like 3 blogs. And I was like, I've never written anything before,
Right.
and he's like, yeah. But I follow you on Twitter, and you seem to have a hell of a lot to say. So I wrote an article. My first was called "My Track and Field Life," and got great feedback. I mean, it was like, it's pretty awesome, that all these people read it and liked it, and
Right.
like, keep writing. And so in the last 10 years, I've written like 300 articles. Got paid for one of them. Actually, this is the one I sent you. I actually got paid for that, but the other 299 or something I wrote basically because, as you know, nobody gives a rat's ass about track and field.
Right.
You know, like, you have this head full of stories and information and opinions, and nobody ever asks you about them. So, so, so when I started writing, it was like, good God, I have a lot to say, and I'm still saying things, and I'm
Yeah.
evolving and talking about evolving. So then fast forward to my best friend, Chris Corfist, he's the head of Reflexive Performance Reset, and he's just a speed guru, national world renowned sprint guy. And the two of us were having breakfast one day, and we said, like, were you speaking this winter? And I was like, I think I only got one place. And he goes, yeah, me too. People don't ask you back if you spoke there once, like, so we'd already burned. So we decided to start our own clinic that we called the Track Football Consortium. Matter of fact, we had one in Sacramento in February, and we plan on being in Orange County next February. But anyway, with the consortium, we really started bringing in great people like Boo Schexnayder and Cal Dietz and Lateef Thomas and just Carl Lewis, blah, blah, blah. Just amazing talent. And so that kind of upped our game nationally and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where my content thing kind of ends. 4 or 5 years ago, Championship Productions asked me to put out a DVD. That was their company's bestseller in all sports in 2018. And then it has remained their number one seller ever since in track and field. But you don't make much money from Championship Productions. It's not a real favorable contract. So now all my content's on CoachTube. That is just brilliant. Wade Floyd, the CEO, is really taking care of me, and my stuff is sold like crazy. And if they buy from your link, you get like 90% of the proceeds. It's amazing. It's really a win-win for content creators. And then I guess one last thing, my son Troy is a digital guy. He runs my YouTube, my Insta, and my TikTok. Mm-hmm. I'm the Twitter guy. So anyway, so that's my content story. And it's been a wild ride for 10 years because like 11 years ago, I'd never written anything, never produced anything.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I've never thought about actually writing an article, or I tried to do a little blog on my site real early and kept, it was just too busy. I don't know. I know you've had the same thing, but it's between coaching and, I'm still teaching right now, and, I might retire in a few years and then I can focus more, but, trying to do two things and commuting, and, it's like, I sit down, if I have time to write something, it seems like it's 5-10 minutes, and it's like, I never can finish anything. So, and like I said, there is that thing trying to get out of my head. So I think breaking it down into pieces has helped a little bit, but that's interesting what you're talking about there, that the evolution, right, of an idea and how it just kind of changes. My wife keeps saying, what are you doing? What do you want to do with this business? I'm like, babe, I don't know. Like, I don't have this master plan in my head of exactly how this is going to work. When I first started, Sky High and Fly, I started because I don't know if I've ever told the story before, but I was coaching at Irvine High School, and I had a dad come up to me, and I used to run, meets on the weekends for Brenton, the younger and the head coach. And, I just sit there basically. And if you'd had a microphone on me, I was shooting up and down all the kids saying, okay, he's too close, he's too far out, he's too slow, and commenting. And I had a dad who was helping me, who had been a relatively successful pole vaulter, like a 15-footer. And he had a kid who was in the meet that I didn't know. And, he basically afterwards came up to me and said, hey, I'd like to get my son to come by and work with you. Right. And I was like, yeah, great. Just bring him by practice one time here, and, I'll do some work with him. I spent a couple hours with this kid. He came out to practice. He had a little bit of talent, and, we're working along, and we get done, and dad shakes my hand and gave me $80. had $80 in his hand. He said, "You spent a couple hours with us. I really appreciate it." And I was like, I hadn't even thought about that. I was just coaching the way coaches do, right? I'm just like, I was happy to get somebody that was interested. So I'm like, hey, it's a profit deal. Like somebody actually could pay me, right? So that was the beginning. And from there, it just, started. I remember going through my business card phase and, setting up the website and, all these little things that happen. And I'm a dinosaur when it comes to, you talked about having your son doing your tech. I'm like, oh man, do I need a tech guru? Because I'm not it. This raise the bar thing you see in the background. My wife did that for me. She's like, yeah, you can put a virtual background on your Zoom meetings. I'm like, really? How do you do that?
Yep.
I mean, no clues. And then she's like, well, why don't you watch your competitors, see what they do? I'm like, I don't know. I don't really care what they do. I'm just trying to do what I'm doing. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I probably should do that more. I'm a slow mover. So aside from this putting out what's in your head, go with us, Coach, a little bit through your background, your in Illinois training, and you've done this for a lot of years. How'd you get started? What did you do in high school? Like, give us the big picture, and drop out some of those big names of athletes that you've coached, and give us those highlights.
Yeah, I always start with saying that I was born a coach's kid. My dad was a head basketball coach at the age of 23, and my mom was 20, and I was born on the night of a basketball game. I was delivered a couple hours after the game was over. My dad coached it, all that kind of stuff. So being the firstborn to a coach that was a career coach, 47 years in the business, high school and college, 44 as a head coach. So he didn't just dabble in it. It was his life. It was his total life. And so I was his wingman. From the age that I could travel with him, I traveled everywhere with him. I was 10 years old and I was going to coaches clinics. Seeing the best and brightest basketball coaches in the world speak. And I think I fell in love with content and clinics and information through those experiences with my dad. So I became, I played basketball. I was a quarterback in football. I played basketball for my dad, and that was my first love. And then I kind of ran track as an afterthought. Like so many, track is really a stepchild in most athletes' lives. Right. Especially athletes that are multi-sport athletes. It's like, yeah, I'll run track in the spring. It won't hurt me. It'll be pretty good for me. And I ended up doing it in college too. I never liked it. I kind of liked winning races, but I hated practice. We were just run to death. And it's made me rebel. And that's what Feed the Cats is all about. So I became a head basketball coach like my dad, and I got fired after 8 years at the age of 30. And the same board that fired me in basketball hired me as the head track coach because they had no one else the month before they fired me in basketball.
Right.
And so with 4 kids, I had to reinvent myself, and I had to accept this sport that I always thought was a stepchild as a real kid now, and we're going to do this. And so, I had some unusual success where we won some state championships and state trophies and things like that, and coached some good athletes. And just as you well know, the more you do something, the better you get at it. And the better you get at it, the more you love it. And so at this point, I probably love track more than I've ever loved it. At the age of 64, I feel younger than I felt when I was 24. But part of that's due to my overriding philosophy of the whole Feed the Cats concept of making practice the best part of a kid's day. When you do that, as a coach, that reflection of the kids loving what they do really makes you enthusiastic, and I think makes you a better coach. And I think that's why my ideas have kind of taken flight with so many schools.
So you use that catchphrase "feed the cats," and I haven't done as a lot of digging into your research. So fill us in on that. What is that philosophy, Coach?
Uh, a turning point in 1999. Um, I had a distance uh, dominated team that should have won the state championship in 98, but did not. It was like a 95-degree day. We were competing 2 consecutive days, and we got beat by a team of sprinters and jumpers. And I said, damn, it'd be a lot easier to win state championships with sprinters and jumpers.
Right.
And so that was part one. Part two, my son was a great young athlete. He could dunk the ball in basketball in the 8th grade. And he said, Dad, I'm not going to run track in high school. Track sucks. And I said, yeah, but. And I thought, damn, it really does suck. If I can't get my own kid to come out for my team, what are we doing wrong here? And then the third thing, I saw a guy speak named Paul Souza, he was a 7'4" high jumper at Penn State. And he was just a D3 coach out in Massachusetts, and never even knew him. But I went to a clinic and saw him, and he talked about getting on the bus. And when you get on a track bus, you see the big throwers, the gorillas of the world, and
Right.
then you see the distance guys, the skinny guys, and then you got the cats, you got the sprinters and jumpers, the cats, and those things all kind of popped into my head, and I said, I'm going to start feeding the damn cats.
Yeah.
I'm going to start nurturing these people where they are. And so basically I became the anti-Clyde Hart. We don't ever, with my sprinters, never do anything more than a 200 in practice, and that's seldom. We are max speed. We are constantly doing short flies, record, rank, and publish. I'm huge. I've kind of started the miles per hour craze. We give wristbands for miles per hour, 20, 21, 22, 23. I'm told I shouldn't say that we don't work hard. What we've done is we redefined work. We perform in practice in very small segments, and we build all of our stuff on a foundation of rest, recovery, and sleep. And truly, we make practice the best part of a kid's day. And those things combined do a great job of increasing the interest in my sport.
Hey, Coach, can I get you to hold just a second? I've got an emergency here from one of my superiors. So
no
hang
problem.
on just a second. Let me find out what's going on.
I'm here. I'm here.
Thank you, sir. Hang on one second. There you have it. All right. So where were we?
Well, basically, I was saying that because we make practice the best part of a kid's day, it's the opposite of the experience I had, where I hated every practice and kind of liked the meets. I was a 400 guy, so you could just imagine how I was just running to the ground every damn day. We'd run 6 miles on a Monday to strengthen our hamstrings. I mean, and then we would do repeat 200s, repeat 400, just crazy stuff. And my guys never do that. And we just get fast, and it we're really good in the 4x4. We're good in the 400, because speed is the basis of everything in track and field. And our jumpers are good, all that stuff. And I think one of the great things is, I say that every school has a good track team. They're just not out for the sport.
Right.
And so one of the keys to the Feed the Cats approach is that you will attract cats to your program. And then when you get them to love their training, they will improve, and if you can get those two things going on, it just makes the sport a lot more fun to coach.
That's so awesome hearing that from you. I just went under in the last 3 or 4 years, starting to become a student again. I had disappeared from even watching track myself. I'm an avid sportaholic. I play golf. I love football. I'm watching the Lakers on trying to win, with LeBron and Anthony Davis on TV the other night. And,
I watch tennis. I mean, it would drive most people crazy if they don't have those genes, of course. And it took me a while to get back into actually paying attention to higher level track, because I'd been out of it for a while. I retired for a few years, and then, coaching at the high school level, not getting any of my kids really to go up to college level, and really not paying attention, busy and all that. So it took me a while to get back into it. And then I started watching, Barshim and Bondarenko and, some of these guys. I watch, one of my big favorites now is Brandon Stark from Australia, great feed, always shows a lot of his training. And I came to that realization, what you just said, is that everything's about speed, because I have a master's degree in exercise science from Cal State Long Beach. And one of my professors went through and said one time, he goes, the world record for the 100 meters is, 9.6, whatever. And he said, what keeps the human body from running a marathon where you could run every 100 meters, that fast? That was the way he started his speech. And then we started going through metabolism, right? And how you burn fuels and all that. And that was one thing that got me thinking about these things. And I realized, someone told me that the world record in the marathon now averages under 5-minute miles. Is that right? I'm pretty sure that's correct, right?
Yeah, so, I think it's about 450 a mile. Yeah.
450 a mile average for 26 miles, which is freakishly fast. And, when I started thinking what you said, I'm like, well, if that's true in the marathon, then it's got to be true everywhere else, and when it's done right, then absolutely. And I'm looking at my speed high jumpers. Of course, the long jump's always been about speed, from Carl Lewis on, and, on down and backwards. And then, I was watching the shot put with Krauser, and I'm like, man, he gets through the ring fast. I'm like, for a big dude, he's doing those 2 circle spins. He's moving, I go, it's a different kind of speed in its own way, but it's speed, and then Sergey Bubka, 20-foot vaulter. What I heard when I was, and I was a little bit closer to his range when I was competing in age, I heard he ran a 10-400 meters with a pole in his hands. And I'm thinking, that's pretty fast for a guy's not using his arms. I mean, he must have been pretty freakishly fast, and you start realizing speed is everything, like you said. So, yeah, that realization, I love that idea. And now what else keeps coming out, coaches, is load management. Now we're hearing all this stuff where people are starting to realize, that if I don't make it through the regular season with my guys intact, it doesn't matter what our record was in the regular season. We're flat, we're dead tired, and we're injured. And these other teams that, struggled at the start and stayed healthy and got hot at the right time are beating us, right? So you start getting these people going, we need to figure out a way. But we're still, I think, at that tipping point. What you're saying is something that I've been thinking for a while, but it's like, I don't know. I've watched, and you're the same age demographic as I am. I remember watching, my mom was a figure skater. So she used to do, what they do on ice skates, on roller skates, but basically the same stuff, the jumps, the lifts, the throws, all that stuff in pairs. And, those athletes would train, the way they do it, and they even show it. They start the music and they start doing their whole routine from the beginning, right? All the way through. And when they screw up, the coach yells at them, and then they go back to the beginning and they start over. And you're like, okay, wait, when you get to 4 minutes and you're dead tired, you might miss that side-by-side quad jump, when you're getting tired at the end. So, I mean, in one way, it shows a little bit of wisdom, like, okay, well, maybe we need to practice trying to do it when we're a little bit tired. But at the same time, maybe the way we're practicing is lending to that. Like you're saying, why do I want to run 400s and 500s and 600s? And the conventional wisdom is, this, lay down your base, right? And then taper later or whatever. And then, everybody's got their own theories. But man, as a high jumper, I think the reason I'm still in business, like you said, is kids like coming to practice, because when I make them run, they're running 40 feet to the bar. They don't run hundreds and 200s, much in training. We do some short, striders and sprints, but nothing like that. So how do you think we get that out more into the mainstream? You know, your from the feed the cats to also just your idea of nothing more than a 200.
Yeah, it's to me, I've been compared sometimes to like a evangelical preacher when I speak about this stuff, because it's so important to me to improve the experiences of kids. Too many kids have terrible experiences, and it was believed for years and years that hard work in and of itself might be the most important thing about sports. And so even in sports like baseball, they would run kids to death. And and to me, it's just so backwards. You're talking about speed being the basis of everything. I love to talk about offensive tackles in football. The guys are 6'5", 320 pounds and can run 21 miles an hour. And you think, well, that speed is not even necessary for them to play, because they never truly sprint in a game.
Right.
But here's the deal. I'm in a partnership right now with Les Spellman, who's I believe last year he trained 8 of the top 27 draft picks in the NFL draft. And we talk about this a lot, that we really should maybe rebrand speed training as CNS training. That it is the central nervous system that is trained when we sprint as fast as we can sprint. And that CNS development, I say be general in the weight room, be extreme in speed training, and be specific with your sport. And if we train by sprinting as fast as we can in a straight line with the wind, if possible, our CNS will slowly, I say speed grows like a tree, will slowly improve, which governs all movement. Yeah. Whether you're backwards, forwards, jumping high, jumping far, it doesn't matter. If you're a volleyball player, you should be sprint training. I mean, sprinting is the number one. When I say somebody's athletic, they're always fast. Yeah. Always. There's no such thing as, oh man, he's athletic, but he's really slow. Right. No, athletic means first and foremost fast. So I think that's really important. And then you don't get that by training to fatigue. Lombardi said fatigue makes cowards of us all. Yeah. 100% correct. 100% correct. But coaches took that, put it on their wall, and went out and destroyed kids. They made them fatigued, somehow thinking that would lead to better performance, right? Which is not true. I mean, I feel so strongly about this. The book that I've been writing for about 2 years now, hopefully it'll come out soon, is called Tired is the Enemy. Because you cannot practice motor movement. I mean, you can't high jump when you're tired. Right. You don't shoot the basketball very well when you're tired. Tired is the enemy of performance. Yeah. So to think that coaches have focused on getting tired at every practice, no matter what the sport is, for all these years, it's just wrong. And I think when people hear my ideas, they're like, damn, that would be easier actually to coach if we didn't have to just focus on hard work. Yeah. And I'm like, oh yeah, it'd be a lot easier to teach kids a high jump instead of making them run laps. Right. Yeah. So I'm curious because, so many of the things we're talking about, I've had what I would say is not trained by anyone or, taught by someone like yourself. Like if I was in Illinois, I'd probably be coming up to you now going, okay, I want to just follow you around and watch what you do, right? And see what this means, as you're applying it on the track. Being a couple thousand miles away, I'm thinking, what do I do when I train my athletes? And, I've got these files on my Instagram because I'll see stuff and I'll take it and I watch the drill and I'm like, oh, here's an excellent, workout for glutes or for, I follow the knees over toes guy.
I saw that guy and I'm like, oh, this stuff looks great for joint stability. I've always got people complaining of shin splints. And I'm like, if this guy had his ACL torn out and he can do this stuff, this must be pretty good, and I joined up for a while and I listened and I'm like, okay, it all seems pretty sound. And, I didn't do any great research on it, but I do a lot of the eye test, right? And so I'm like, okay. And I've got in my own training program for people, some of the things that you're talking about when I go, for me, speed, endurance, continuum. And that's something that I know just from a very little bit, again, as a high jumper and not a sprinter. And so, when you're talking about this philosophy, I'm thinking on that end, the continuum that I've been dealing with, which goes basically the idea of the laying down the base. Let's do it in weights first. Like say you go 5 sets of 8 in the weight room, full squats, and then do that for 3 or 4 weeks. And then we go to 5 sets of 5, and maybe we don't go as deep and we add some weight, right? And then towards the end, we go through another 4-week cycle there. And then maybe we start doing 3 sets of 3 and even higher weights and maybe quarter squats now, right? So we got this base pyramid of 5 sets of 8 is starting to go up. We're starting to taper, all that stuff. And again, maybe this is even in itself super traditional, right? Maybe, I'm asking as you're looking at it, if you're like going, dude, that's way overtraining, what are you doing the 5 sets of 8 for, right? So explain how that works with your weights, maybe even, coach, and maybe even like in the course of a sprint workout.
Yeah, I think that that we've had that idea pounded into our head that we go base, we start long and slow, we end up short and fast.
Right.
And what I say is that's planting beans and expecting to grow corn.
Right.
That speed grows like a tree. Well, if we take 11 months a year building a base and then taper, in the championship season, we have never built the correct base.
Right.
The correct base is improving our maximal velocity. If we can, have a hurdler that it could run 19.1 miles an hour as a junior, that's really slow. And, no matter how hard he'd work at the hurdles, if your max speed is 19.1 miles an hour, you're going to have a hard time breaking 16 in the highs. I mean, you're just too slow. I don't care how technical you are, how hard you work, how much you lift, your speed is holding you back. Well, this year he runs 21.8, and that's not a common, to improve over 2 miles an hour is not a common jump in a year, but it does happen if you keep watering that bamboo. If you keep at it consistently, 2 or 3 speed sessions a week, where the athletes are happy and healthy, they're never hurt, they never have shin splints, because your volume is so damn low. And what blows people's minds, and there are literally hundreds and hundreds of Feed the Cats coaches out there. I think there's probably thousands. And what they tell me is that when they started doing that, they thought this would be really good for short sprints, jumps, but what are we going to do about speed endurance? And I said, well, we're going to do some lactate workouts, like maybe 8 or 9 of them during the season, but that's it. And even those are like 3 by 200. I mean, it's low rest. This is still not high volume. And so when they embark in this journey, they really don't believe that their 4x4s are going to be competitive, but yet they are. Because I think you've seen this, I've seen this, I got stories, at least 10 stories of a great sprinter being thrown into the 4x4, having never run a full lap in his life. And he goes out and kills it, because conditioning is really overrated. You do not have to be a cross-country athlete to run a fast lap. As a matter of fact, cross-country guys can't run fast laps because their max speed is not good enough.
Right.
So, when you talk about weightlifting and stuff, I think that we can perform in the weight room like we perform on a track. I think we can go in and do performance level work in the weight room without going through long base periods. And it's just so hard for us to try something radically different.
Yeah.
But yet, most big things that happen in our world happen when somebody has a counterintuitive thought that we're going to do less to achieve more. That's counterintuitive. Nobody says that. Like, hey, an extra hour of sleep is more important than any workout you ever do.
Yeah.
People are like, I don't accept that, because that's not the way Americans were raised. We're hard workers. And so many times hard work leads to injury or actually reduced performance. And for sure, really hard work day after day that is not joyous will make you not want to do that activity forever.
Right. Yeah.
And I want my track kids to love it.
Right. Yeah, well, it's interesting that you say that, because I can think of empirically a couple of different times, both in my own career and in my athletes. As a senior in high school, I had shin splints all the time because, the one thing about high jumpers, for the most part, people are right when they accuse us. They go, most high jumpers are lazy. I would go, okay, yeah. And, like, tell me something I don't know. But
they're cats.
They're not lazy when it comes to high jump practice. Like I jumped every day. I would jump Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because it was fun and you're getting the feedback of going over the bar, right? And everything's great. So I had bad shin splints because I just jumped, all the time. And, we had meet on Thursday, had an invitational on Saturday, usually, right, on the weekends. I'd already jumped Monday and Tuesday. Probably didn't jump Wednesday because, like, I got to have at least one day rest. And, by the end of the season, my shins are hamburger. And so we get, spring break would come, and usually my coach would give me the week off, which was welcome. Come back after a week off, start to feel a little better again. And then we go through the crush of the season. You get to the big meets. I didn't know about these to my junior and senior year, but that's our league finals. And then we start our run to the state. It took about 4 or 5 weeks of elimination rounds to get there. And again, shin started to break down. I was taking aspirin all the time. I woke up a couple mornings spitting up blood, and, we're both sitting here going, I understand it. I know where that came from. And I have vowed as a coach to not do that to my athletes, and both times that I was rested, the time with the spring break, came back after that. I think we had a makeup meet on a Tuesday. I jumped 6'9" after having a week off. And then, 2 days later, jumped 6'8" and went to the Arcadia big invitational out here and jumped well. And, I think it was because I was well rested, and then my senior year, I strained the hamstring just a tiny bit doing the jump and at the league finals. And my coach gave me the whole week off before prelims. And then I jumped 6'7" first jump and was in, it was like, and felt great. So what you're saying is I did less and I got more out of it, right? It's because my body was saying, hey, this is crazy. You're doing too much work. And if I don't listen to my body and I keep pushing, then your body says, okay, fine, we'll just break. we'll just give you an injury that will make you stop because you can't do this to yourself, And I think one of the things that came out of that is, and probably the best learning is that way, right? I'm extremely hard-headed, but I do learn my lessons. And what I've done with my kids when it gets to the end of the season is that the tapering definitely comes into my mind where it's like, hey, you get those parents who are like, oh, we want to jump today. We're going to do this. I said, no, we're not doing anything. Just jog, stretch, a couple light striders, and you guys ice bath later. And, let's call it. We do a couple run throughs. I mean, I just lightened up on these guys. And it works. And that's I'm sure a small sample of what you're talking about. But it makes sense to me. And then what we're seeing now is a boom in this, which I still think, like you said, Americans in general are having trouble with, because you listen to these guys and they kill players and all these guys for not playing. during the season. And I think Popovich, I'm not a big fan of Popovich, but he was the guru of load management when he had his aging stars, right? We're all in their mid 30s. And he's like, hey, we want to milk another championship out of these guys. We're going to take some days off. And it may happen to be against a team that the NBA would like to see us put out a full effort against in the regular season. And we could care less. We don't care if we win our division by 20 games. We don't care. We just want to get to the playoffs and have these guys healthy and rested and ready to do what they do, because nobody cares who wins the regular season. So you and I are in that business of building these athletes, and like you said, where speed rules, and have them perform when the chips are down, and they got to be healthy, right? You got to be rested and all those things. I love it, Coach. Beat the Cats.
I was going to say you'd love this story being a high jumper. I had a high jumper who, in his senior year, he cleared 7-footer better 14 different times, and his best jump was a 7.2. And one of the things that made him great, this sounds weird as hell, but he started in center field 26 times for the baseball team that spring, which kept him from jumping.
Right.
As you know, great athletes want to work. Charlie Francis said the best sprinters have to be held back. They don't have to be pushed. Well, anybody that's good at anything, well, if you're good at the high jump, you want a high jump every day. And I don't think there's anything worse for a high jumper than the high jump every day.
Right.
And so it's bizarre, but I mean, like, I have a rule that anybody that has any type of soreness in their shins does not practice that day. And you know what? They're always, like 99% of the time, they are 100% the next day.
Right.
And to keep kids healthy like that, instead of, as you know, back in our day, they say rub some dirt on it. We're going to work.
Yeah.
You need to get used to living a sore life as an athlete. And I'm like, well, gee, beat up, banged up, injured, miserable kids, they don't perform in practice, and they probably don't perform when it counts.
Yeah. I have a kid who's a typical story, and I feel bad for the kid. And I don't know who's to blame more, whether it's just the way it all works out, but he's a basketball player, a volleyball player, and a high jumper. So he played on the basketball team. I think he played travel ball, or club, whichever. And then he also did volleyball and club volleyball. And then his mom's bringing him to jump workouts with me. And I'd see him walk out. First time I saw him walk out, this kid looked exhausted. We hadn't done one thing yet. I go, how do you feel? He's like, I'm okay. I go, you have practice last night? Yeah. Did you get any sleep? Yeah, I got a little bit of sleep, And I'm just like, I'm telling the mom, I go, you're going to break this kid. You're just going to break him. He's going to eventually break something catastrophic, or he's going to master the art of going half speed, because he's just doesn't have a whole lot of full speed reps in him, And I'm watching this year. A kid never jumped over 6 feet, and I saw some potential, but most of what I got was, like you're saying, were just lackluster efforts because of overtraining. Radical. 3 sports at the same time. We're talking. I mean, it's suicide. So, taking all that into account, but like you said, man, the American way is hard work and grind it out, and, rub some dirt on it. And, and there's guys that they take advantage of the training room, and God bless the trainers, to keep stretching it. But at the same time, I don't know if this analogy works for you. I do this with my jumpers. I compare it to a video game. I grew up, right when the video game started getting out, I was in my mid to late 20s. So, and I remember some of the fighting games where, you've got a power bar at the bottom, and when you take a punch, your power bar starts to shrink, right? So you take a punch and your power bar shrink, and then finally you get hit, And it doesn't matter if it's a jab or a hook or whatever, but if you're at the sliver at the bottom, it eats up your power and you're knocked down. And then you're frantically pushing your buttons and you're trying to get back up, right? And when you stand up, the power bar comes back, but it only fills up halfway. And I said, to me, that's the perfect analogy of what we're doing with these athletes is we drain the power bar, then they go to sleep and they eat and they rest and they do whatever they do and it recovers, but it doesn't recover all the way. So you drain the batteries a little bit and then the next day you do more and you drain the batteries a little more and they recover a little bit. And I go, the thing that is amazing about high school kids is how well they recover because they're young and they're still growing and all that stuff. So they have an amazing ability to stretch and to come back to where the power bar is almost where you left it the day before, or maybe it's only 5 degrees down but you still grind them down, right? And at the end, they end up breaking.
And there's that thing called survivor bias, that every coach that overworked kids, and I think that probably 60 to 70% of all coaches are still that way today. They just coach the way they were coached. And you're going to have some success if if you have some charisma as a coach, no matter how you train kids. And you can train kids doing way too much, and you will still have some healthy kids at the end of the year who may perform well. And if you are basing your coaching on the survivors, and not thinking about the 20 kids that quit your team and the 10 kids that could not run at the end of the season because they were broken,
right?
I think that's what happened. I mean, every football team, nobody appreciates hard work more than a football coach. And what they put their kids through in the summer is almost like a military training. And they see extreme fatigue as building toughness and, pushing through barriers. But you know what? They all get slower. They don't know that because they're not timing anybody.
Right.
But they all get slower. They all get beat up. Now, Feed the Cats football coaches don't do that because they're timing twice a week, even during the season.
Yeah.
Because there is no better barometer of a kid's health than how fast he runs.
Yeah.
If you have a 22-mile-an-hour kid and he comes in on Monday running 19, you have a problem. Now, the problem might be you, it may be him, it may be a combination, but speed is a great barometer of an athlete's health.
Yeah. Interesting. God, there's so much. It's amazing to me how I've gone through this, and I keep learning, all the time from you coaches. I want to thank you again, Coach, for spending your time. It really opens my eyes, and it shows me that there's so much left to learn. Like, I think, man, I got a real good handle on this, and I got that, and then it seems like God will always bring me somebody that just goes, wait a minute, you haven't considered this yet, and like, oh wait, okay. And I'm trying to put it all together in the master framework. I heard what you said earlier about the central nervous system. I find it very interesting in that I've seen the workouts on Instagram where somebody gets the treadmill going really, really fast, right? And so they get somebody and you're standing there waiting, and they might put their hands down and get their feet on it to where it's going. And then they take their hands off and they just do their best to keep up until they can't, right? Where they're just flying. And I don't know what the miles per hour are, but I know you can get to a place where your legs are moving faster than you could move them yourself, right? Because with that little bit of grip at the bottom of your foot and that thing is flinging your leg back, as long as you don't fall down, you're moving pretty fast, right? So you've got what I think there is a decent example of CNS work, right? Because you have to do some kind of adapting to survive there, right? When I was at UCLA, I'm throwing out my props, but Coach Anthony Curran, who's one of my mentors at UCLA, great pole vault coach. This is in the early 80s. He built a pole vault ramp there with a 1-degree downhill slope for his vaulters. And I remember him telling me at the time, he goes, yeah, this is going to help them, with their speed. They're going to be able to move their limbs faster and do whatever. They obviously can't compete that way, but I found it an interesting thing, and I have sought to get places in my training where we do get some downhill running in, for the same reason, not a long time, not at a steep slope, because you get the pounding. So, but that whole thing, there's just so many pieces to the puzzle. So what is coming up for you in the state? You're still coaching. You're still at the high school level there?
Yes. We just hosted a 16 team sectional last night. So so I was up pretty late. But we qualified in 12 events for our state meet next week. It's a 2-day state meet, Friday and Saturday, where we have Friday prelims, Saturday finals. And then our season's over. And it's kind of a nice thing about being a retired chemistry teacher is that I still have that season that just totally blacks out the sun for me. But in about 10 days, I get to reopen my book and do my third rewrite of it. And, I'm speaking at a couple clinics, I think 3 clinics in June and 3 in July. And then, of course, winters are my big clinic season where I do a lot of traveling and stuff. But yeah, I do a lot of consulting too. I've consulted with, I think 6 of the top 20 lacrosse programs in the nation at the NCAA level. And like a team like Prince Sample is now feeding the cats. Actually, they're feeding the tigers. And they made the Final Four last year, first time in 18 years. And basically, what that means is they're sprinting twice a week, and they care about miles per hour. Yeah. And they stopped conditioning. They don't run their kids anymore. They play lacrosse and they sprint. And they were really worried that what's going to happen late in the game. Are we going to fall apart? Fast kids are fast at the end of the game too.
Right.
The speed is it really a type of endurance?
Yeah.
The faster you are, if you can run 22 miles an hour, you can run all day at 20. That's the idea of that speed actually creates endurance, but endurance does not create speed. If you go out and run kids to death, they will get slower. And so those are really important concepts for even a field sport that I know very little about.
What do you, when you, with this counseling, like this week, I have a kid who's going to the meet right before going to state. So if he can get through this meet, he could conceivably go to the state meet. And I have him running tomorrow. I told him I wanted to run, or today. I told him this yesterday. So today's tomorrow. Okay. I told him to run today. I wanted to run 40 meters and full recovery, 30 meters, full recovery, 20, full recovery, 10. And then recover. We're going to do 3 of those and done. That's his workout for today. So to finish up, Coach, I know you're a busy man. You got things you got to do. And I got my first period class coming up here, or second period, but my first period of the day. My brain just starts overloading with all the possibilities and training and everything. But we were talking about the feed the cats, and I was saying that high jumpers are active for about 5 seconds, and then they rest. So we're like got to be the perfect, case study, right, for you, the perfect idea of training at high speed. I keep thinking I just want to change horizontal speed into vertical lift, and so I need to get people fast, and part of that for me is I've got to train them to run fast and then get ready to jump, which is not always easy. As you know, as you're running full speed, you can't all of a sudden go, wait, I got to jump, because your arms are busy doing what they do when you're sprinting. And so, there's a little bit of learning curve there, but that's pretty much the battle that I've been undergoing. I'm starting to think like a European. I'm changing a lot of my girls to the European single arm, get them tall, run them off the ground, and see what happens. And it's almost easy. It's silly is if I can get them fast and running with high cycling, they just come right off the ground, nice and easy. Don't have to really be able to jump, which is kind of funny. It's counterintuitive, but I love the mentality. I keep thinking of the cheetahs. They sprint and they hit or miss. They sit there and they hyperventilate for a while, before they go again. So it's it's already revolutionizing my thinking. Do us a favor and do some pimping for yourself on, you mentioned a couple places that you're going to be. If I can help promote that in any way, I will. And I also, just for my own sake, would like to know some of those dates and places. You mentioned ending up out here in Orange County next year, and I want to know about that. But then let us know kind of a little bit of your itinerary. And if there's any way I can promote you, of course I will.
Yeah, I'm speaking at a strength and conditioning national, I believe it's called NatCon, NATCON, in Chicago area in June. I'm speaking virtually to a cross country, the Texas cross country coaches in June. That's going to be interesting because I'm kind of the anti distance guy, but I still think you can stay general in the weight room, be extreme in speed training, and then be specific to your sport. And if you're specific to your sport in cross country, you're doing cross country stuff, but those kids need to become more athletic too, and that's the thing I'm like, we're there. I'm 3 days in Norman, Oklahoma, in the middle of July. That's going to be an interesting clinic. I'm doing a recorded thing in Vegas, but that will have no audience in July. The one in Orange County, we have not announced the high school site yet, but it's going to be the first weekend in February, the weekend before the Super Bowl. And a track football consortium is I think a brilliant concept, because what we do is we bring in people from different places. We had for example, we did one in Iowa where we had Matt Campbell, the head coach at Iowa State, and the person talking right before him was Joey Woody, the great track coach from Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy before that was Steve Jones, who is probably the national guru of leadership. And he wrote a book called The Twin Thieves, which is amazing. So what we do is we bring in football, basketball, all kinds of different coaches, but they're all performance coaches. I mean, we can all learn when we get out of our silo, and I think there's things that I can teach a football coach because I'm a track coach,
right?
And so I think it's a healthy cross pollination type thing that we do, and that's going to be, like I said, in early February. We have not announced our Chicago TFC yet, in December, but people can find that stuff just by following me on Twitter. That's at PN Track, and then of course, if you Google my name, it goes all to my YouTube stuff and all that.
Right. All right. Well, hey, Coach Tony Holler, I appreciate you and your Feed the Cats and your willingness to come down and slum with the guys in the low thousands on their Instagram podcasts. I greatly appreciate your time and your experience and your patience as we suffered through more technical glitches than I've had in a long time. I will definitely have to save it in the editing phase, but that's doable with all these great computers that we have. And I look forward to, if I figure out where you are in February, when I know where that is, I'm going to do my best to be out there, and you're going to be one of my top follows. Like I have the knees over toes guy, and I have I watch a lot of Adonis Harrison's stuff, and then definitely have you on there as well, because I want to apply this to what I do. Seems tailor-made. I'd be a fool not to take advantage of it.
Oh yeah, we would like to get the knees over toes guy to speak at a consortium. So if you know him well,
gosh, I wish. I what I really want to do, Coach, is I kind of want to take what he's done, and I'm a 59-year-old white guy that used to do the high jump, and I think I was in my mid 40s, I could still dunk, and now I'm where I can barely touch the rim, and I'd like to take the stuff that he does well, what you do well, stuff like what Adonis Harrison does well on his site, the explosive power, speed, and the non-overtraining part, and get to where I could dunk a basketball at age 60 again, within a year. I don't think I can jump 7'3" again like I did in college, but I wouldn't mind applying. And I've never been afraid to throw myself into the lab, as it were, to do the experimenting on me before I do it with my athletes. So that's kind of where my brain goes from time to time. Like, hey, I still feel pretty good. I can get off the ground a little bit. So, let's try this out. So that's what I'm thinking. And I'd love to get him. I think I actually, just direct messaged him one day and said, hey, you can use me as a case study. Just teach me everything, and film me, and you can say, hey, here's the before and after with this broken down old guy that used to jump over stuff. And he started doing our training program, and now look at this. You'd never believe this guy was 59. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So if there's a way to make that work, let's see if we can do it.
Would love that. That'd be
Make us
cool.
both famous. All right, Coach. Well, hey, again, I really appreciate your time and your expertise. Best of luck at your state finals. Sounds like you said, in 10 days it's all done, and nothing else to train for.
Well, thank you, Troy.
And that is going to wrap up another episode of Raise the Bar. Once again, I'm your host, Troy Haynes, signing off. We thank Tony Holler for his unbelievably outstanding contributions to track and field, to bettering our coaching prospects and teaching us a better way to succeed, one that seems, in my mind, to be overdue, and kind of has been heading this direction, I believe, for a while now. I think there's enough coaches that have been frustrated by a lack of results and a prevalence of injuries to some of their best athletes. And we finally, seems like we found out enough to smarten up and to lighten up and to reap the benefits of not training our athletes into the ground. So thanks again, Tony, for Feed the Cats and those philosophies. You don't have to look far to find Tony Holler and his the Feed the Cats stuff. I looked it up on the web, and it comes right up. You can buy his DVDs. You can get all kinds of access to articles and everything that Tony's been doing for the last 10 years that has revolutionized his life and his coaching. So until next time, this is Troy Haynes signing off, and be ready to raise that bar.